This sonnet too picks up a trope, means idea, common to both Petrarchan sonnets and to other Elizabethan versions of them. The setting of the hunt with the beloved as a deer being hunted by the poet as huntsman. Again, unlike its typical treatment in Elizabethan sonnets, in Spenser's version, the huntsman catches his prey. In fact, Spenser's is a radical exception to this convention because he not only wins the chase but presents the victory over the beloved or the conquest of the prey as being by her own will, for example, as her own desire. The ambiguity of line 9 line 9 में लिखा है there she beholding me with a milder look makes it unclear who makes the conquest possible by becoming milder, the hunter or the haunted. But line 11 suggests that the beloved remains nervous about the prospects of marriage, belying the last line of the poem. It would be very instructive for the student to compare this poem with Sir Thomas White's poem, Thomas White's poem, whose soul list to hunt, a sonnet with similar themes and imagery, but in the traditional Petrarchan mold. In White's poem, the dear or beloved is ultimately attainable, and the poem ends with the line "Noli me uh, tangier, for chasers I am." The Latin phrase meaning "do not touch me," which are the words inscribed on the collar around the deer's neck. In contrast, there is no Caesar or competing lord to whom the beloved is bound in Spenser's poem. In her very availability, she thus becomes the site of a transforming discourse of love and desire in Spenser's poetry, a discourse in which the beloved is not just transformed from a remote or unrealizable object of desire, but with a few mutuality and reciprocity that probably originates in Protestant thought, is hinted at as being herself a desiring subject. This sonnet too uses the rhyme scheme ABAB, BCBC, CDCD, EE, using the same three quatrains plus a couplet scheme. But unlike Sonnet 34, it resists a thematic split into an octave and a sestet, instead being a poem less about a condition than an event. It lays out the moments of the event in three steps, the three quatrains, followed by a commenting couplet. The reversal typical to the Spenserian sonnet happens in the second quatrain itself, with the return of the deer and her eventual willingness to be captured. Now we are doing sonnet 77. This sonnet borrows not from Petrarch but from another Italian poet who was also inspired by Petrarch, Torquato Tasso, जिनका टाइम है लाइफ टाइम है 1544 to 95. Specifically his sonnet Non Sonsi Belli. Tasso describes his beloved's breasts through two analogies, comparisons means autumnal fruits and the legendary golden apples. But Spencer थोड़ा ना ये एक्चुअली मैं इसलिए ये कर रही हूँ बिकॉज थोड़ा सा ना प्रिंट ठीक नहीं है इसमें. जस्ट वेट. ये लिखा है बट स्पेंसर्स पिक्स ऑन only one of these in these sonnet, devoting another sonnet entirely, sonnet 76, to the other. On both 76 and 77, Spenser's intentions are not to describe physical beauty for its own sake, or as sexually stimulating and erotic, but to forge a connection between physical beauty and spiritual virtue, linking the erotic with the spiritual and the sacred. That is, he wishes to suggest that the beloved is so full of virtue and religious and moral purity that even the sight of her breasts can only arouse in him an appreciation of these qualities in her, rather than simple physical desire. Hence, the description of her breasts are as exceeding sweet, yet void of sinful vice, that many sought, yet none could ever taste. Sweet fruit of pleasure brought from paradise by love himself and in his garden placed. The reference to paradise is multi leveled, referring to the original sin and the fruit of the tree of knowledge of sexuality, actually, as well as suggesting that his beloved is paradise itself embodied, with the understanding of paradise here as that original state of man, when the sensual and spiritual were not separate but fused. In this, Spenser is deliberately attempting a fusion of the Platonic ideal of ultimate beauty as lying beyond sensual perception and Christian myths and values, such that the Platonic idea or ideal of beauty may be perceived in the physical world by one sufficiently spiritual to not be overwhelmed by its sensual seductions. Spenser seems to be applying Reformation celebrations of conjugal means married sexuality as superior to celibacy to the less strictly marriage oriented Petrarchan frame of sensuality. The reference in the final couplet to the thoughts as guests at the table of his beloved is intended to communicate this detachment from the vagaries of an uncontrolled sensuality. Vagaries क्या होता है? Fancies, है ना? Okay. Like the other two sonnets, like the two other sonnets, this sonnet too follows the rhyme scheme A B A B B C B C C D C D E. Sorry, there is a false rhyme between lines 4 and 5 for Vivery and Rosh. Just wait. And royalty, royalty, are not true rhymes for ly and by. This may suggest a dissonance. Dissonance means hardness between the quatrains, but it would not be true. Firstly, the overwhelming theme of the sonnet preempts any such dissonance, holding the poem together on the unlikely comparison of the beloved's breast to a table laden with delicacies. This may suggest a resonance between the quatrains, but it would not be true. Firstly, the overwhelming theme of the sonnet preempts any such dissonance, holding the poem together on the unlikely comparison of the beloved's breast to a table laden with delicacies, since we must remember that such rhyme patterns were intended to provide a totality of linked and related experiences. As such, false rhymes were a permitted poetic liberty, basing the rhyme on spelling rather than sound. We may therefore treat the rhymes as true ones and regard the three quatrains as part of a single experience, fusing the sensual and the spiritual or religious, rather than as discrete and disconnected parts of one event. Like Sonnet 34, this one too describes a condition rather than an event, as in Sonnet 67. However, more like Sonnet 67, this sonnet too cannot therefore be split into an octave and a sestet. ओके, इसका अब हम कंक्लूजन करेंगे इस पूरे यूनिट का In this unit, we have looked at some important aspects of the sonnet form and the traditions of courtly love poetry that influenced Spenser. We noted how the sonnet was in many ways the aptest literary vehicle for the articulation of a new conception of love that owed much to the Italian courtly love poets. Some of the important aspects of the courtly love tradition and their transformation in Spenser's poetry, along with the historical reasons for this, were also touched upon. We then examined some of Spenser's shorter poems in this light. We saw how they draw upon and yet diverge substantially from earlier traditions of love poetry, especially the Petrarchan. We saw how they serve to illustrate not just the poet's unusual poetic skills and originality, but also the peculiar moment in the quality of passion in the sonnet sequence, from despair to comprehension to celebration. The formal analysis of the sonnet also revealed the ways in which Spenser managed to forge a new kind of English lyrical form. In the next unit, we will examine two longer poems of Spenser, the Epithalamine and the Prothalamine. आज इसको हम finish कर लेंगे. Okay, thank you so much.